This week, we'll be looking at developmental theories, psychosocial theory, cognitive theories, and moral development theories. You will read about Erikson, Piaget, Vygotsky, Kohlberg, Gilligan, and Noddings. In this lecture video, we will also discuss several elements that impact developmental theories: temperament, goodness of fit, attachment, and parenting styles. I want to start by recognizing and acknowledging that the information in this week's lecture and module may be review for you. For many of you, if your BA is in human development, psychology, sociology, or child development, you've probably heard these terms before and you may even be an expert on them. That's awesome. For others, this information may be new or unfamiliar. Perhaps the last time you took educational psychology was in your teacher preparation program, or maybe you worked in a different field entirely before deciding to go back to school and become a school professional. Either way, this information is valuable. Here are the reasons why. My hope is that you will still catch something new or revisit some aspects of development that had taken a back seat in your mind. Second, as a school professional, you will spend a lot of time collaborating with other school professionals and working with students and parents. In those spaces, there are plenty of people who are not familiar with developmental theories, and you will be in a unique position to use your understanding to educate others, advocate for appropriate practices, and strategize with teams to help meet students' needs. Third, for those of us in the field of education or psychology, it is sometimes easy to forget that these ideas and concepts are not common knowledge. I worked at an elementary school for 8 years, and I worked with many people who specialized in curriculum and development, but did not know anything about temperament or attachment. I knew teachers who were great in their subject areas, but never considered that the child struggling to behave appropriately didn't need, quote, more discipline, but a different approach entirely. Even for myself, I took educational psychology in my undergrad before I ever stepped foot in a classroom. I hardly remembered any of it until I took it again in grad school. By then, I was applying these concepts in the classroom every day. The information I was learning could be directly connected to my work. And now again, as a parent, I pick up on and realize new things as it relates to my own children. Development is fluid and ever-changing. Thus, our perspective of our own development and the development of those around us tends to change with each iteration of information gathering. So yes, this may be review. However, there can still be something new that hadn't been considered, or maybe you'll be reminded of something that can be shared with others, something that would make a difference in their life. So let's dive in. Why study development? Well, understanding development helps us understand the complex inner workings that make a student who he or she is. Our experiences, even from a young age, play an important role in shaping our identity, our self-talk, our behaviors, our coping mechanisms, and even our learning strategies. As we have discussed in this course and in other courses, early life, schooling, cultural, religious, and home experiences impact developmental processes. Thus, school is not just a place to learn academics, and personal development also takes place. Amidst all the school and academic activities happening on campus, each student is experiencing personal development. Who am I? How do I achieve my goals? Should I try to make my parents happy? What do I want in life? Who are my friends? Am I a good person? Do people like me? What am I good at? Education is about the whole child, not just one part of the child. With that in mind, there are 3 key ideas to keep in mind as we go through this week's content. Domains of development, for example, biological, cognitive, psychological, are interrelated and have lots of connections between them. Personalities continue to form, just as biological or psychological development continues throughout the lifespan, so too does personality development. You can probably see evidence of this in your own life. Through school and learning environments, social relationships are fostered. And as is noted in your text, social relationships play a key role in acquiring knowledge. So now let's look at some factors that impact personality and personality development. First, we have temperament. Temperament is a child's early tendencies in emotional responses and a reaction to the environment. It is biologically based, so it's observable at a young age and is something that the child is born with. It's a behavioral style, so the child has tendencies or leanings that are exhibited through their behavior. And it is a unique way of interacting with the environment. It's not uncommon for siblings to have some similarities in temperament, but it's truly unique to each child. With a unique way of interacting with the environment, children will get different responses and reinforcements in the environment as well, which in turn affects personal and social development. Temperament theory developed out of a longitudinal study conducted by Thomas, Chess, and Birch. They studied temperament and behavior disorders in children. It was a departure from nometic approach where one looks for similarities and generalizations amongst study participants. They sought scientific explanation of individuality. The study is now referred to as the New York Longitudinal Study. They followed 136 children. They conducted interviews with parents and teachers, and they used preschool classroom observations. Participants were observed at 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years. And their study revealed 9 dimensions of temperament. Each of these 9 dimensions are seen as a continuum and together make up a child's temperament. They are activity level. Is the child always moving and doing something, or does he or she have a more relaxed style? Rhythmicity. Is the child regular in his or her eating and sleeping habits, or somewhat haphazard? Approach and withdrawal. Does he or she never meet a stranger, or tend to shy away from new people or things? Adaptability. Can the child adjust to changes in routines or plans easily, or does he or she resist transitions? Intensity of reaction. Does he or she react strongly to situations, either positive or negative, or does he or she react calmly and quietly? Quality of mood. Does the child often express a negative outlook, or is he or she generally a positive person? Does his or her mood shift frequently, or is he or she usually even-tempered? Attention span and persistence. Does the child give up as soon as a problem arises with a task, or does he or she keep on trying? Can he or she stick with an activity a long time, or does his or her mind tend to wander? Distractibility. Is the child easily distracted from what he or she is doing, or can he or she shut out external distractions and stay with the current activity? Sensory threshold. Is he or she bothered by external stimuli such as loud noises, bright lights, or food textures, or does he or she tend to ignore them? To better understand these 9 dimensions, I have included a handout in this week's learning module. You can pause the video to look over this chart, or you can access it from the lesson module. It goes over the different temperament qualities, and it looks at the 2 opposing poles on the continuum and what that might look like at these different ages, 2 months, 2 years, and 10 years. And there's 2 slides here that go with that if you want to pause to look at those, or as I said, I have attached the Word version of this document in the lesson module. Okay, so from these 9 dimensions and from the research, Thomas, Chess, and Birch's research revealed that there are common temperament clusters. And the research found that about 60% of children fall into one of these 3 categories. So first is the easy child, which is about 40% of babies and young children. Difficult children makes up about 10% of the population. and slow to warm, which makes up about 15%. So that leaves 35% that don't fit into one category, and they may be more of a combination. Now, why is temperament important for our work in the school setting? 2 reasons. One is understanding temperament can help us to avoid blaming students for responses that may be typical for them according to their biological responses and temperament. And secondly, because of the concept of goodness of fit. Goodness of fit is the degree to which a child's environment accommodates his unique temperamental profile. Meaning, is the caregiving or school environment a good match for the temperament of the child? Children are more likely to succeed in the educational setting when there is a goodness of fit, because there is a good match between the child's natural inclinations and typical behaviors and the classroom expectations. Further, this implies a bidirectional focus. The child can affect the environment, and the environment can affect the child. The concept of goodness of fit posits that there is a good fit, that if there is a good fit, it equals healthy outcomes. Consider, for example, the dimension of rhythmicity and the impact on the classroom environment. A child who thrives on routine and is used to regular meal times and consistent sleep and wake times will most likely enjoy the structure of the classroom environment. A child who dislikes routine, is used to eating within a 1 to 2 hour window, and enjoys sleeping and waking at various times will most likely not enjoy the structure of the classroom. For one child, the classroom is a good fit, and for the other, it isn't. Now consider the same children but different classrooms. For example, these students are in 6th grade. The student who thrives on routine and regularity is assigned to a laissez-faire style math class, while the student who thrives on the unpredictable is assigned to a rigid and routine-oriented math class. What is the goodness of fit? How will this impact their learning that semester? Here is a visual of this concept. It's a cycle with the temperament and the environment interacting. As school professionals, understanding temperament and goodness of fit is important because we have to understand that to a certain extent, a child's tendencies, emotional reactions, behaviors, and preferences are a result of their temperament, not from reinforced behavior or social learning. And just as we discussed with NBBs, in some cases, these reactions and behaviors are not entirely under their control, since temperament is the result of both biological and environmental influences. Goodness of fit can sometimes explain why a teacher may get along so well with one student but find it difficult to connect with another. Thus, when a student is having difficulties in the classroom, this would be another variable for teachers, school counselors, and school psychologists to consider when looking for solutions. Are expectations unclear? Do the teacher and student need to better understand each other or communicate differently? In some cases, is there a classroom or teacher that would provide a better fit? Another factor influencing personal development is attachment. As described by your colleagues in their attachment disorders NBB presentations, attachment is the strong affectional bond between a child and his or her caregivers. Attachment is formed during the first 1 to 2 years of life and can affect many different aspects of development. It specifically affects a child's outlook on the world's trustability. Attachment develops over time and through the interactions between the caregiver and child, and the child's temperament can play a significant role in the development of this synchrony. A difficult child may be difficult to soothe, have irregular sleeping and eating patterns, and cry for long periods of time. This may present a challenge to the caregiver when their patience is running thin, feel they have, quote, tried everything, or are extremely sleep deprived. It can affect the rate at which the caregiver responds to the child's needs or the type of response that's given. There are 2 main categories of attachment: secure and insecure. Secure is when a caregiver is attentive and responsive to a child's needs. The child believes, when I have a need, mom, dad, nanny, other caregiver will meet my need. So there's warm, consistent caregiving, and the caregiver is sensitive to the child's needs. So that means they are able to understand what the child wants or needs. Insecure, when a caregiver is inattentive, non-responsive, or unpredictable in their care over time, the child will likely form an insecure attachment. So that means there is a lack of warmth and consistent caregiving, and the caregiver is insensitive to the child's needs. So this could result from lack of experience, not being able to understand what the child needs at that particular time. And if that happens repeatedly over time, that can result in an insecure attachment. In this situation, the child believes, when I have a need, mom, dad, nanny, other caregiver will not or may not meet my need. I will have to do it myself. These beliefs that are formed are referred to as the internal working model. The child builds his or her internal working model from his or her attachment type, meaning a child with a secure attachment will view the world as safe and adults as trustworthy and capable of helping, whereas a child with an insecure attachment may be wary of adults and feel that he or she needs to fend for himself. Attachment style and responsiveness of the parent may be influenced by the caregiver's parenting style. The last component I'd like to discuss, which impacts personal development, is the parent-child relationship or parenting style. This has applications and connections to a teacher's classroom management style as well, which is discussed later in the course. For now, let's consider how a student's home life and parents' parenting style of them will impact how they interact with others and react to situations at school. The concept of parenting style and the three commonly defined styles were developed by Diana Baumrind in the late 60s, early 70s. Baumrind assessed parents' child-rearing practices and their connection to children's competency. She assessed parents on broad dimensions, and she identified and measured two main aspects: warmth and restrictiveness. Warmth is the degree of responsiveness, nurturance, and communication, and restrictiveness is the extent of control and maturity demands. Her research was groundbreaking at the time and has since been expanded on by other researchers. Baumrind's research revealed three typical Western culture parenting styles: authoritative, authoritarian, and permissive. Authoritative describes parents who show high warmth and high restrictiveness. This is considered to be the ideal situation in Western culture. There is a balance between affection for the child and restrictions on behavior. Studies show that children from authoritative homes tend to be happy, energetic, self-confident, and do well in school. This parenting style is promoted as a good model for how teachers should conduct their classrooms, a balance of warmth and restrictiveness. Authoritarian describes parents who show low warmth and high restrictiveness. This parenting style is characterized by high demands for obedience, with little to no explanation for why. However, these demands are typically made within the context of a supportive parent-child relationship. According to Ormrod 2011, the underlying message of control is, I love you and want you to do well, but it is equally important that you act for the good of the family and community. Children from homes with this parenting style may be anxious, have poor reactions to frustration, but typically do well in school. The third style is permissive and is described as high warmth and low restrictiveness, meaning the message of love is strong, but there are few boundaries or expectations on behavior. Children from homes of this parenting style may struggle in school or in highly structured environments, and they may be immature, impulsive, and exhibit antisocial behaviors. Parenting styles vary from home to home and even parent to parent. Some things that influence parenting styles may be child and parental characteristics, personality, temperament, etc. Number of children in the family, only child or multiple siblings. Situational factors, job situations, stress, economic conditions, pandemics, etc. And culture, cultural norms and traditions, cultural expectations for child rearing, etc. I can personally attest to how these various factors affect parenting. During times of stress, I become much more authoritarian, and my children respond to discipline methods very different due to their different temperaments. In addition, my husband and I were raised with very different parenting styles, so when we became parents ourselves, it took quite a while to find our groove. I tended to parent the way I was raised, and my husband tended toward the way he was raised. It required a lot of communication about what we wanted for our children and discussing the ultimate goal of having happy, competent, and healthy children. We are 5 years into parenting, and we still have the occasional disagreements over behavior expectations and consequences. In conclusion, students at any age are a work in progress, and understanding developmental theories and the factors that influence development, such as temperament, goodness of fit, attachment, and parenting style, can help us to better understand our students. Development is a complex process that involves many layers, which all interact with and impact one another. For example, one's biology influences his or her psychology, which interacts with the home, school, and community environment. Likewise, the home, school, and community environment influence one's psychology, which interacts with his or her biology. We must recognize that this complexity exists in each of our students. We must approach our students with fascination, seeking to understand them, all of them.